they're just four guys in a studio. We're talking about induction noise. Their poor wives, they get so bored, 'cause all they know's induction noise. They're cool as ice, they're Nico, Andre, and Neil. Mr. Q's the host, they're induction noise. Induction noise, they talk about cars. Induction noise. Induction noise, your favorite podcast. Induction noise. Induction noise, coming every Friday. Induction noise, brought to you by Master Panel Beaters. Induction noise. Hi guys, and welcome back to Carbs and Coffee's official podcast, which is, of course, Induction Noise.
Dun dun dun.
That was a very disappointing dun dun dun. Where's the rest of you guys on that one? Hello. Let's try that again. Welcome back to Induction Noise.
Yeah, man, yeah.
Good to be back. Yeah. Get it going.
Let me hear the guys in the back.
Wow. You brought the slow clap. Brave.
It's a medium clap.
I was trying to go for a one-handed clap, but it's not as easy as it sounds.
Mephisto said it's
More
easy.
pedant.
Oh, wow. It's late in the day, as you can probably tell. Yeah, we're back in the studio to chat now about Formula One. It is the pinnacle of motorsport. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that or deny it in any way, shape, or form. It's one of the longest running forms of motorsport that are out there. I think it's lost its way a little bit over the years. It's come back a little bit and gone away a little bit again. It's been a journey. But it just doesn't seem to be able to recapture the magic of those 70s, 80s, and 90s kind of Formula One magic moments.
For us petrolheads, I would say, and people that watched older Formula One. Because for new people coming into the sport after watching Drive Tribe, Formula One is the best thing.
Drive Tribe?
Drive Tribe. Drive to Survive, sorry.
Hashtag DTS.
That sounds way too close to DTA for something like that. And
What's DTS?
Oh no.
you really don't know.
Oh, wow.
It's fun. I'm too old. Don't tell me it's
Just
fun.
don't send it to any of your co-workers.
Yeah,
And
all right?
don't Google it.
Yeah,
Go on.
Google it.
That's
Yeah,
fine. Just go on, guys.
Yeah, so I think like after Drive to Survive, for the people that didn't watch Formula One as we did from, well, I don't want to say start, but since we were small, for them it's the best thing since sliced bread because it's millennial
They
crisis.
don't know any better.
Yeah, they don't know any
Well,
better.
I suppose we
but
don't
for
know any
us-
better than it would still be quite the spectacle to
Yeah.
watch.
And to be fair, I think Formula One is. I'm enjoying Formula One at the moment. I really am.
Yep, me too.
I think except for a certain car that's running away from the field at the moment for various reasons, the rest of the field's very close. And even in qualifying, qualifying is actually quite a spectacle because the race is kind of predictable. but qualifying is actually quite something to watch.
But the year didn't start like that. It's like it progressed better through the year for some
Yeah,
reason.
the guys caught
Yeah,
up.
but I mean, it was also a case of people are still trying to catch up with the new rules on the cars, and the cars are still, being developed and changed a little bit here and there and tuned, and guys are getting to grip with them. So it takes a little while for it to settle in. I think a lot of the midfield racing right now is pretty much as good as we've seen in many years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Closer, in fact, than we had in the glory days. Because the thing is, in the glory days, we remember, seeing Senna and seeing Prost. But if you really think back, it was the McLarens running away from everybody. It was first the Ferraris running away, and then the McLarens, and then the Williams. And I mean, you always had these teams that were like quite a few steps above, and then you had 2 or 3 teams that could almost compete, and then you had all the other guys that got lapped, some of them, and it wasn't as close. It was fierce at the front, but the field wasn't that close.
No, the field wasn't that bunched up, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
But the championship battle was very hot.
Yes.
And it got very heated and very emotional and at times violent. Which was, of course, entertaining to watch, but we don't encourage that sort of thing. But yeah, I think there are certain elements about Formula One that I would certainly change. Because it's easy to sort of, from a spectator's point of view, say I would change this and that and the other. It's very difficult to know whether those changes would actually really work. So, everything that I say is to be taken with a bit of a pinch of salt. But I almost want to say that there are too many rules now.
Oh yeah, 100%. There's a lot of rules.
You mean in terms of the on-track rules, or you mean in terms of the car development rules?
Some of the on-track rules, I think, when you're in a position where the track marshals have as much of a chance of determining the outcome of the race as the drivers themselves, then it's maybe getting a bit much. Whereas in the olden days, 2 cars bump into each other. You put 24 guys with red blood and high blood pressure in cars with many thousands of horsepowers, they're going to bump into each other.
Things are going to happen.
You have to accept that sometimes things are going to happen. And it's like Formula One has suddenly decided that, no, it shouldn't. Like, everyone should stick to their lane kind of thing. And, I mean, is that really what you want in racing?
There's no getting your elbows out. It's a lot like Scalextrics racing.
I don't know.
It's become very civilized. And yes, from a safety point of view, obviously that's great. But the cars themselves have become so safe now that I'm not saying encourage contact, but I'm just saying don't make such a big deal of it if it does happen. It's racing incidents,
Well, sometimes it is. But if it's not, then, being a racer yourself, there's nothing worse than getting taken out by someone just because they are, taking the mick and they're not doing what they should. And you're the one on the receiving end, and you're just like, well, okay, this guy's stupid, and therefore I'm out. So if people get penalized if they drive stupid, that's fine. But there must be a bit of leeway, right? Let people race. I think that's the thing. Let them race. But to me, the safety, I'm a big proponent of safety in motorsport. And all these people are like, oh, yeah, it's too safe now. And it's like, no, they did something to save people's lives. How stupid is that? Just don't that's idiotic.
People who watch motorsport for the crashes shouldn't be allowed to watch motorsport.
I don't like those people. But people are like, oh, man up. People used to die all the time in the 60s, 70s. Yes, that's true, but it's horrible. I mean, half of the people in the field would
how would you like it going to a soccer match and every once in a while someone just shoots a player? I mean, it's just like...
Well, I mean, there are suburbs. I mean, there are kind of areas where that happens, but it shouldn't be encouraged.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like I'm always one for safety. It shouldn't be nannied or anything. But I mean, if something like the halo and stuff, people had all sorts of stuff to say about it. To me, it's like if it saves people's lives, and it has directly saved people's lives. Charles Leclerc,
Hamilton and Verstappen.
Joe the other day when the car was on
Grosjean and that fire.
I mean,
was that
Hamilton,
the young guy who had the crash at Spa?
No, he's passed away.
No, man, there was...
No, the Formula 2 guy that...
No, not the Formula 2 guy. There was a crash in...
Neil.
Yeah.
Mr. Wiki...
But the thing is, I mean, we can see it in action. We can see how, even the little get-together in 2021 and at Monza that, Verstappen and Hamilton had, where he ended up basically in Hamilton's car.
Yeah.
On his helmet,
if
touching his helmet, basically.
If there was no halo there, that would have been a very different story. So, I mean, the halo really works. Things like that makes for driver safety, 100%. People saying, oh, but it's not dangerous. Dude, you're going 350 k's an hour wheel to wheel with other people with too much testosterone. There's always proper danger there. But your chances of being killed is a lot less than it was, which is a good thing. I don't care how you look at it, it's a good thing. But the biggest problem we have with and it's not just safety, it's aero and other things as well. The cars are too big.
Yeah,
that
that's
is
way too
the
big.
single biggest problem is that the cars are too big. The racing is close. The cars almost need to do a 3-point turn at Monaco Grand Prix to get around certain corners. Because if you don't start turning before the corner, you're not going to make it.
No,
because the cars are too big.
It's to
The cars
package
are
all of the electronics and batteries and everything
so-
that they want to in the
and
back. Put in the back, so.
the EV, all the electronic motors and the whatnot. So that is, the cars need to be smaller. If the cars could be the same size as the 90s and 2000s cars, we would see and the same kind of close racing. Because now the
So,
tracks are too tight.
Realistically, given the packaging constraints and everything required to make the hybrid drivetrain system actually work, do you guys think that the hybrid drivetrain is the way to go with Formula One?
No. We need less of that and more of synthetic
motor.
fuels.
Yeah, synthetic fuels is the way to go in my
Synthetic
opinion
fuels
as well.
is the way
That's
to go, and they've, some of the Formula One guys have actually said they're looking at that for the future and making the cars more of a spectacle, because we all miss the V8s and the V10s and that scream that you can hear from miles away. I mean, the noise is the biggest thing that's missing at the moment.
Yeah.
And anyone says that it's not. I mean, we when we were leading up to the show, I remember going to my first Formula One race, which was 2011 Hockenheim, and Michael, 2011, 2012, sorry, when Michael was racing for
With the
Mercedes.
Mercedes, yeah.
And walking up to the track, they were handing out earplugs.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, this cannot be that loud.
No, it can't be that bad.
And when you sit 40, 50, 60 meters away from the car and they come out of the pits and do rolling burnouts and your entire body vibrates.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember it was such a big, I called my dad in the stands. And I'm not ashamed to say it. I was sitting there crying. Like, I was so emotional. Like
experience is-
experience,
Yeah.
of course, of firstly seeing Michael. Like,
Yeah.
that was my childhood hero.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. But just the entire, it's such a sensory overload
Yeah.
that you experience. And having been to races subsequently to that, where it's,
Yeah.
the speed
Yeah.
is there, but it's just not. It's not the
thing
same.
is,
it's not the same.
If you've only ever watched races on TV, you won't know.
Yeah.
But if you've sat trackside and heard one of those V8s or V10 cars screaming past,
It's
at,
visceral. It's a
Yeah.
visceral experience. Everything,
yeah.
you can feel it
word.
in the ground. You
It's-
can hear
it's-
it.
it's violent. I mean, it is.
It's
it
scary
is-
a little bit,
It's
actually.
beyond visceral. It's genuinely violent and exciting. It's an insane amount of sound that comes out of it. And as someone who studied sound engineering, and I sort of really got into the whole psychoacoustic side of things, where how certain sounds actually affect you emotionally and physically. I can tell you that sound is a huge part of what makes something exciting or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you've got that many cars on the grid, all screaming like that, at a volume level that you have
Can't
not
even
experienced at a rock concert, it's something on a completely different level. You can't describe it to someone
I
unless
still
they've
remember
been
when I was a kid, and we used to go watch racing at Killarney. My first Grand Prix, I was 40 years old when I went to my first Grand Prix. So I went to Monza with the new cars last year.
But Monza is a different experience.
Yeah, Monza was a different
Because the Ferrari, the fans.
So the emotional side of that
Tifosi is
was just
amazing.
being there, and so that was great. And seeing the speed of those cars, it's still something special.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
and they're
definitely.
not quiet. I mean,
No.
they but it's not as visceral as that. Because I
And it's
remember
not a nice noise. I find
it's
pretty
better.
loud.
It's much better now.
yes, it's not
in
bad.
2021 and before, it was at some point in the hybrid era, it was bad.
The
Like, it was
2016,
boring.
2017 ones was because when they just changed over
Yeah.
was horrid. That was the
sounded
worst.
like a tuned ST or something. It was not. It was not. It was
Bit
not
like
special.
a wet fart.
But the latest cars sound a lot better. They're a lot more revy and screamy, and that's better. But when I was a kid, so I was like 4 or 5 years old. So I used to go to Killarney with my dad, and when the nationals were around. So these guys still in the manufacturers were still racing in the modifieds. So you had the Group N's and you had the modifieds. Now the modifieds were these like wide wheel arches. Willie Hepburn, the animal, he had a Sierra XR8 with big wings and a big engine, 7-liter V8. They had Henny van der Linde with these 300 ZX twin turbo
Yes,
IMSA engine,
yes.
and I think it was in that Nissan. And you also had the rotaries, the RX-7 rotaries that would spit flames as they would go. So I used to get earplugs. So one of my uncles, he was in the army, so he gave me these over-ear earplugs. So I used to wear earplugs because the sound of those rotaries would just like, you would feel it in your bones.
Yeah.
And it was so loud, you'd feel deaf after they pass you there.
Yeah.
So that was just local motorsport. Now even here, I mean, it makes sense, like under X decibels, blah, people have moved closer to the track, but it was a different time, it was a different era in terms of sound. Even locally, you get more of a buzz going to Killarney from sound and experience than you would get from a modern Formula 1 race.
Yeah. Anyways, why are you moving towards a track if you don't like the sound? What
And then you complain
morons
about
are
it,
they?
basically.
Because
yeah,
you're
and
an
then you
idiot.
complain about it. Yeah, you must be a moron.
So you know what the thing is for me a little bit. We always talk about the back on the old day. I think the racing itself is quite comparable, right?
Yeah.
But the big thing with the movement towards getting a new fan base and getting the addition of social media.
The biggest
has
problem in
made
Formula 1 is the social media.
The problem is now when you get a boring race for a fan like I think like the way we watch. Yeah, sometimes there's a boring race, but even then, I mean, if I can use like one example of it, when a boring race is still a little bit exciting is, I mean, there was a moment in Spa when it was in the rain, right? And there were a bit of changeable conditions. It wasn't the most boring race, luckily, if I remember correctly, but there was a moment where Max in the
Almost
wet lost it through going through Eau Rouge up to Radio.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I thought, I hope people watching realizes there's probably a handful of people in the world that at that speed can do that.
Yeah.
There isn't much more than 1 or 2 who could do that at the moment.
Exactly. So and then people are saying, "Oh no, they're running away with this." Like,
And
but just
also-
enjoy. You must be a little bit more than just the basic of watching the race, watching cars go around. Oh, there's a crash. Oh, it makes it exciting. I think there's a level towards it, and I feel sometimes Formula One doesn't really the promotion doesn't pander to that. And also it's about other topic. It's not about we're missing an element where there's and that's what made the 2021 season exciting, because I really don't think Max and Lewis like each other at all.
No.
There was
that-
real rivalry,
Exactly.
bit of animosity
and
there.
that's what we want. That's what we want. That's what I want.
You
I
want the
people
hero
to-
and the anti-hero and you want the groups.
changing of the guard, basically.
Yeah.
That's what we look for. We don't want
It
everyone
was
to be
the
friends.
Alonso Schumacher, those kind of
Yes.
fights
Yeah.
with. Yeah, I mean that's absolutely what it was about. But I think there was an era where we didn't have that many heroes in Formula One. Now, I'll be very honest, and I think the quality of drivers now is insanely high compared to other years. In those glory days, you had some legends, but they were like 3 or 4 legends, and the race were just also runs. Most people can't remember their names.
But would
now,
we call the guys? I mean, yes, we have some incredible, hugely talented drivers now, but would we call them heroes? Well, speaking of heroes, we should probably mention that this entire season of Induction Noise has been sponsored by Master Panel Beaters. In case we haven't mentioned it before, Master Panel Beaters is a major structural repair center in Montague Gardens. I was in fact there this morning picking up another car that they did a little touch-up for us, and my discussion with Stephen was to do a little brush touch-up on the bumper where there was a little chip in the paint, and then also on the driver's door where someone had obviously opened the door up against something and just chipped the paint right on the edge of the driver's door. And honestly, as is usual for Master Panel Beaters, they just went above and beyond. Within 24 hours, they turned the car around, they sprayed the bumper, completely paint matched it, they sprayed the door, completely paint matched that, and everything looks like new. You would never say that that car has ever been touched in any way, shape, or form. It's incredible what they do for their customers to make sure that their car looks as good as new when it drives out their doors. Check out Master Panel Beaters on our Facebook page, on our Instagram page, and also on our website. And of course, you can check out Master Panel Beaters on their own Facebook page. Contact Steven and the guys if you've got anything that needs doing on your car, whether it's a tiny little stone chip on the front bumper, or you need to rebuild the entire car because it's rusted to pieces and it happens to be a Lancia. Check out Master Panel Beaters. They really are the bee's knees.
Well, I think they have the potential to become heroes.
But the thing is, because of the level that these guys operate at now, and I suppose there's not a hell of a lot we can do about that because that's just the level that the sport is at, and it will continue to get more that way. These guys are so laser focused that they almost can't afford to have personality.
They're robots. They're not people.
robots.
So, you know, the days of people like James Hunt, who used to turn up to races drunk and just
Having
be a bit disruptive.
But they were actually amateur racers. If you're honest about it.
They were pretty
I mean,
amateurish.
there were exceptions like Niki Lauda that was kind of professional in those days already.
Yeah, he was a very
but most of the
professional
other
one.
folks were just dicking around until it was race day.
That's kind of what made James Hunt so great, was the fact that he was kind of an amateur, but man, he had a feel for a car.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Q, like, sorry I'm interrupting you, but I think that's a motorsport problem. Motorsport has become too professional in a lot of the
Yes.
cases. It's not about the Bentley boys anymore, right? It's not about the guys like that rock up in a car, convert it, race it, and then, you end up selling it the next Monday back as a road car, basically.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think that the sport misses that in general. I mean, the last character we had was Kimi, right?
Yeah.
He's in
Kimi
Formula
was a real character. I mean, even
It was the real deal. Yeah.
even in the Lotus days, right? When he was racing for Lotus and he came back, and the rumor has it that he got a serious amount of money.
He almost bankrupted them.
for winning. Yes.
He almost bankrupted
But
them.
the stories about that, how he would party between races, they would start partying and not stop before the next race weekend, basically.
But at Ferrari, he
it's-
would go in a bender. So I listened to, I've got read his book, and I also listened to his podcast where he was talking to the Formula One podcast guy. And it's absolutely insane. The guy would go on a bender for 2 weeks when he was racing for Ferrari, factory driver. Go on a bender for 2 weeks, and then they would kind of just sober him up in time for practice. And the race days after those weeks was normally his most successful ones. It's just the guy was absolutely just at a different level, and he was just he was different. He was made different.
Yeah.
I enjoy Alonso as well, that's still racing today.
Alonso is
He's
a
probably
legend.
now a bit like, it's
He's
it's
a
a
very
bit
good
long in the
driver
tooth
and he is
now,
a
whatever,
legend,
but I
but
enjoy
He's
him.
not a nice guy.
Yeah,
He's
I didn't want to say it, but he's not.
He's quite a bastard, right? If you look at the way that he
It's a bastard.
the way he
okay.
No,
operates.
if you look at the way that he operated and his ethics in the years that he, all through the years actually, he would just burn bridges and scorch earth and just throw people under the bus and throw teams under the bus.
One of the reasons
But he's good.
GP2 engine.
Yeah.
In Japan.
There are two reasons why he is still so well regarded and highly regarded in Formula One. First of all, he is an exceptionally good driver. That has to be said. But secondly, he is a PR machine
Yes.
because he lives in Europe and he speaks, I don't know how many European languages, fluently.
Yeah.
So whenever he gets an advertising deal or an endorsement deal, he can do international adverts in all of the languages that they need to be done in.
Look, and he was a hero
And there
in
are
Spain.
very few drivers who can do that.
Yeah.
But he was a hero. I mean, in Spain, the Alonso fever
Yeah.
when he was at his height was
When he was
insane.
driving for Renault.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
he was a top celebrity in Spain. Well, all over the world, he was a good celebrity, but in Spain, he was like a national hero.
Top
Yeah.
G.
Yeah,
Top
he
G.
was quite the top G in Spain at that point. But he's not a kind of team player, nice guy. He's been
No.
really.
Well, look at
he's
his
out for
teammate.
himself and he's out for
His
the money.
teammate now currently, I won't
but it's-
even feel bad if his teammate got kicked because of him.
No, but that's different. But I mean,
not
but
gonna-
he's changed a lot though. He seems
lot
he
mellowed
seems
out.
a lot
Yeah,
more
he's
mellowed
mellowed down,
out
yeah.
and actually giving advice to his teammate and stuff. Where before we would
I think
just
it's
like
also because he sort of figures he's not really in the fight for the championship. So
not yet. When it comes to that time, we're going to see the old Alonso. He will play the mind games. He's not as good as the professor was, as Alain Prost was. That guy. In
now
terms
there's a
of,
guy I couldn't stand.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He was the political. He was the political expert.
Yeah.
He played the FIA that was based in France like a fiddle, and he had them all on his side, and he would drop hints. He was a very good driver, and a thinking driver. He was very sharp, but he had talent. He was quick. I mean, you don't win like what.
But he
3
made up. He made up what he lacked in driving skills with diplomacy.
Yeah,
Which-
but
He was the best when it came.
yeah, you don't get races like that anymore. Like I remember there were the one of the last 2 races of the season where Ayrton Senna basically just said, if I can't remember who it was, but if they didn't finish the race, Ayrton Senna would have won the championship. And
So
all
he took him
Ayrton
out.
did is first corner he just went straight into
Yeah,
it.
Japan,
Suzuka.
Japan
Yeah.
90,
Yeah, it was in Suzuka.
Japan 1990.
But it
or
was kind of-
91?
it was
He
kind of-
drove, I saw it. He just drove.
He
Prost
just
off the
drove
road.
for.
Yeah.
There's no one in Formula One today that will do that.
Well, the same way. I mean, if you
Well,
think
you will
about
get
it
penalised
also,
today if you do it. You'll.
Yeah.
If you think about it also in Estoril, when Michael was challenging Villeneuve for the championship,
Yeah.
he got disqualified from the season. If
Yeah.
I'm not for that
Yeah.
for that single incident.
One
if I'm not-
incident, and he got excluded from this
He-
completely.
it
He
was
like
between
kicked,
him
he
and the
got 0 for
championship.
season,
So
yeah.
it's also a bit of a there's a Formula One has always been notorious for like serious knee jerk reactions, right?
Yes.
It's always been a bit of an interesting place of inconsistency, rather.
We shall not mention 2021.
Yeah, which is typical about it, right? I mean that is kind of like what the sport is all
There's always
about.
controversy with
There's
it,
always
right?
controversy. Yeah.
And now we back to the controversy with Massa looking for his world championship,
Yeah,
the Hamilton
Oh,
World
yeah.
Championship. So yeah, it's a bit.
But you know,
hopeless.
the thing is, wherever you have that number of big egos and that amount of money being played with, there's going to be guys who are, pushing the envelope to the point where, you're flirting with the line. You're not quite
generally-
crossing it, but
you don't find places where lots and lots of money flow without a whole lot of assholes sprinkled in there. That's
yeah, I
just
mean,
the
it's,
way-
I mean, the amount of money that's in Formula One is just
Ah,
ridiculous.
it's next level.
It's unreal.
And the moment that you try and convert it to rands, you realize how much money
oh
it
no,
is.
you
But
can't
you
even do
see-
it because you look at the tiniest little
Bolt.
part or bolt or something on a Formula One car, and it costs more than my Jag.
But it's probably the same bolt that's used in your Granada,
No, it's not. I mean, these guys are using titanium wheel studs and I mean, it's just crazy
Carbon
the amount
fiber,
of
everything.
Yeah.
I
the
feel
amount
that
of tech that goes into these cars.
I mean, there was a few years ago. There's always this talk of a driver coming from IndyCar, right, coming over, and the last one that really did it quite successfully, in my opinion, was Montoya, right?
Yeah.
He'd won Indy 500. He was an Indy champion, was he not? He definitely won Indy 500, but he came into into Formula One and he upset the apple cart, right? And it was exciting because he really brought it to.
He was a talent.
He was really
He was a
talented.
talent. He had a decent car, right? I mean, the BMW was strong when he came through, but he was a really talented driver. He wasn't consistent, but he was super talented.
Yeah.
He
I
was
think
one
the
of the
other thing-
only guys at that stage that I felt could go wheel to wheel with Michael in terms of talent, in terms of
Yeah.
raw talent. But he didn't have the rest
But
of the
you
package.
But I think what he really did for me was highlight one of the areas where Formula One has fallen short, and that is if you go and watch Indy races, those guys are going at 10/10ths for 100% of the race. There's no mechanical sympathy. There's
Tyre
no
management and
Tire
whatnot,
management.
yeah.
There's no trying to save the car. It's just balls to the wall, drive as hard as you can for as long as you can. Whereas with Formula One now, with all the reliability rules, the tire management that you've got to do, the tires being literally designed to degrade at a specific rate,
That's stupid.
I mean,
Yeah.
you want to go and see the guys drive like heroes, but they can't because they've got to hold back constantly just to make sure that they make it to the end of the race and to the next race.
I'd rather see even fuel stops being implemented again.
Yeah, fuel stops.
You know,
Bring them back.
I hate strategy and that kind of thing in racing. I actually don't like pit stops.
But I'd like to have the option of it.
Yeah, but
You know, make the car so that it could do a whole race without pitting.
Yeah.
But
or
give
you
them the
drive
option
the
of...
hell
you can-
on pit.
There's a pit, there's tires, do whatever the heck you want. Whoever's done first wins. Right?
And I
That would
like
work.
that. I like that attitude of do whatever you want, because I was saying this the other day as well. You know, you walk through the paddock of an F1 race nowadays,
You can't call it a paddock.
which you can't call a paddock, except the paddock's a paddock, so you
Only
call it a
in
paddock.
Texas, in Austin, you can't call it a paddock. So, but anyway, let's go on.
A paddock is a paddock, no matter where you put it. So if you walk through the paddock, you will find that, you know, where are the six-wheeled cars? Where are the cars running weird engine configurations?
Well, somebody tried it in the 70s and they found out it couldn't work.
No, but I mean,
And where's
that kind of weird experimentation.
The-
Where
the-
is that?
The best was the Brabham, that Gordon Murray designed, the
Yeah, the
fan
fan
car.
car.
Right?
Yeah.
So that was, I mean, that, but as it's almost science fiction. I mean, that's
Yeah.
insane. You know the story of the
Yeah.
fan car. So they had to keep the revs up at a certain amount of revs going into a corner. So you had to drive it on the throttle so that the car could have enough downforce to pull it around the corner.
The funny thing is, Bernie basically got involved in there and just asked them, "Listen, guys, there was no sort of." He basically, as a promoter of the series, basically asked
Yeah.
them, "Listen, we're going to outlaw this because it's just
Yeah.
not going to be a spectacle.
Yeah.
It's not gonna,
Yeah,
just so much
so
faster
it
than
wasn't
everyone else."
banned at all. It was they decided to
Yeah.
Leave it.
to leave
But
it.
you know, and there, you know, there's other stuff. Like I said, there was the six-wheel Tyrrell. There was was it the McLaren that had the secret brake pedal?
Yeah, there was a McLaren in the
Yeah.
later mid 2000s.
So
And I think it
you
was
had all
another
these
Brabham.
weird and wonderful innovations that actually differentiated the cars.
Or the F duct that they put the hands over.
Yeah,
Have you heard about that? Like to
Yeah, yeah.
create to change the airflow over the helmet to make it more.
and you know, I want that for Formula One. I want Formula One to be a place of innovation, not just a place where existing technology is being developed further. So
I think it's there. You just don't know about it.
no,
I think it's so secretive nowadays that. But I get what you're saying.
but if it was there, you'd see bigger differences between the cars, and you'd see bigger differences between cars in
Exactly.
terms of their performance.
So
and
you have to
wouldn't
balance those.
need things like the whole DRS thing. I hate that it's necessary,
Yeah.
but without it, you wouldn't have any overtaking.
Because in the old days, you would have the one car stronger in the corners, the other one stronger in
Exactly.
the straights, the one accelerates better.
They-
Now
they-
they're all the same.
Now they're all the same.
And it's inches. The one is like 2 k's an hour faster, the one's like, splits, and everything split seconds. Everything's thousandths of a second. I mean, the guys didn't even have stopwatches that could properly do that in the
But it's because
50s and 60s.
you know, if you look in the 60s and 70s, the specification book that would have dictated how you build your car was probably 12 pages.
It was a pamphlet. It was
It
not
was,
a book.
it was a
page.
It was a handwritten pamphlet that was handed
It
around.
was written on a handkerchief, man.
It was a page with 5 bullets on it. Those were the rules to
Now-
build an F1 car.
Now it's an 8 gig DVD full of PDF files.
But the thing is though, but I mean, I think it's the balance that you have to get right. So I've in the past, I've not a racing legend or anything, and I haven't done one.
Oh, don't be modest.
Trophies and stuff.
Legend Steenkamp here next to us.
But I raced in a series with like old cars, fine cars and classics, where there was such a discrepancy between the different cars. There was no rules per se, other than it's kind of a scratch race, or it was a handicap race, or in classics there was a certain whatever time you do, you get put into a class. But there's no, like, you had a guy with a Ford V8 and an Alfa 2 liter, and you had a Chev, and you had a BMW and a Porsche Turbo, and all these things raced
And a
together.
Mini.
And a Mini. And all these things race together. But I mean, it's kind of, if my checkbook's bigger than yours, then, you know, I just buy 2 seconds and I
Yeah.
go to the different class. So there wasn't any uniformity that guys were racing like, you know, door to door every corner. You generally, there'd be a bit of racing, and then after 3 laps, you'd kind of fall
Drift.
into formation.
Yeah.
And then because you are 1 or 2 seconds faster. Now, with the karting that Neil and I are racing, the whole point of this is that there shouldn't be variation. So there's different chassis providers. A bunch. The main providers, there's probably like just 4 or 5 of them in total. So what these guys do is the chassis is very specific. The size, the width. There's actually, after every race, well, in nationals and stuff, people would come out with something to measure the width of your rear axle. And if you're over a certain, you're out. The engine, the engines are 100% the same. So they even, if you win something, I've been on the podium before, they would take out your carb, and now you need to measure the tolerances in your carb. You know, like, is the float set up correctly? Because it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So the point here is there should be no, my engine's faster than yours. The point is the engine should be no different to the guy next to you. So the quality of racing you get in terms of for the drivers, and also for how close the racing is for spectators, is better in a series where it's controlled. But the variation and the interestingness of what's going on, it becomes quite monotonous. If you see cars that look the same, that kind of sound the same, just, you know, it's just the drivers fighting. Spectators lose interest.
Yeah, but also, you know, the karting races tend to be shorter than a Formula One race. And an advantage over another car pushed over time is going to be a disadvantage in some other areas. Like, for example, if you build a car that's stupidly fast in the corners, chances are it's going to eat its tires quicker than one that's just fast on the straights. Or you're going to have a car that's got way more power than the other car because it uses some kind of innovation in the engine, but it's going to chow its fuel way quicker than the others. So you kind of balance all of that stuff out eventually through the sort of time period that a Formula One race runs over. So even in the old days where there were big differences between the cars, the fighting and the battles and the racing was still there. And then the other thing that you know, a modern Formula One car has that sort of really makes it difficult if there isn't a lot of variation between the cars is the aero. Because if you're driving in dirty air behind another car, and there isn't a big advantage for your car in some or other part of the track, it becomes very difficult, near on impossible, for you to overtake the car in front of you unless the driver makes a mistake.
But that's very true. So aero is also something that we don't have if you normal saloon car racing. That's not like, you know, national touring cars or something. Normal,
Like your
local
318 with a spoiler on the back.
Yeah, so normal
really
saloon
count.
car racing and karting, we don't have aero isn't the problem for us, really. So I like that variable is taken away. It's about the driver. That's
Oops, someone's stealing the Ravster.
someone's stealing my Ravster. Right now.
In case you can't hear it, that's the Ravster's alarm going off outside.
Andre's, at least he's got the knife that he threatened me with. Or the Ford corner with.
Yeah, I don't know why I get threatened with a knife just because I like Fords. It's just,
I mean,
it's a bit discriminatory, I feel.
did you drop oil in front of his Alpha?
No. His Alpha was perfectly capable of dropping oil by itself.
All by itself, basically. But there's a bit of there is a solution, I feel, to that, and the one thing that I feel Formula One always gets wrong is the rotation of the regulations. Because it happened with the previous regulation set, and it's going to happen now in 2025 or 2026 again, is you inevitably get someone that really gets the regulations right. Someone gets it 100% right. The same way now with Red Bull did it, Mercedes did it.
Mercedes got it very wrong.
right. Yeah, for now in this one. But now
Blown diffusers, Red Bull.
yeah, exactly.
Before.
So let the guys, let the teams catch up, like, naturally. Because what happens is you get a big disparity, and then you'll get normally what happens is towards the end of sort of a cycle, you'll get closer racing at the front. And then what happens, then they change the regulation again, someone gets it right, and we're back to square one where someone out-qualifies everyone by a second. Yeah. So I also feel like you need to give the guys more time to get accustomed to it. Because the time to find 2 or 3 tenths takes so long. It's now even more hampered by the budget cap. But I think that's a product of the racing, and the way to do it is just let the regulations set in for longer than 4 or 5 years potentially.
And I think the question also is these big steps in regulation. Like, it's a new era. It's now the era. It's now the, just be more evolutionary in that. Add a little something to the rules. You know what I mean? Don't go like, let's throw out the old rule book and let's start with a new one.
And also, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. 2021, the front runners were very, very close. Closer than they've ever been.
Yeah.
And then, and
except
funny
you're
enough,
a Ferrari fan, because for some reason the last 2 cycles, they build a great car for the new rule set, and then gradually go backwards.
I know what's going on.
Yeah,
I know
what's
what's
going
going
on.
Ferrari's been making pretty good road cars.
yeah.
Let's admit that. So they were like, we don't care about Formula One. We've won it so many times.
No.
So many times. We just making
Ferrari
good
is
road
Formula
cars
One.
now.
Ferrari is still a racing team first and a car manufacturer second.
I'm
but
not
it is.
convinced of that.
but it-
I'm
but
not
it-
so sure.
It really feels like that with Ferrari sometimes. When
Their
their road cars,
their road cars feel
are
like
good,
that.
Yeah.
their racing cars are bad. And when their racing cars are good, their road cars are bad. It really feels like that for some reason.
It's not too far off.
It's really not far. Think about
But that's
it.
also because, they've always been a fairly small manufacturer.
Now they're big.
And, they would, like, if you go and look at 308s, right? I mean, I've now been lucky enough to see quite a few 308s of a certain vintage. And it's quite funny when you look at them and you start looking closely, there's no 2 308s that are alike.
No. Any Alpha is like that as well.
Because you'll go to the 308 and you'll see, but this 308 has got this kind of switch and that kind of this and that kind of that. But this 308's different. And it's the
old
same
Alphas-
year.
It's an Italian thing. It's not a
It's
Ferrari.
not just
Old
an
Alphas
Italian
also
thing.
like that.
It was a Ferrari thing because
old Alphas are also
apparently
like
what
that.
happened was that they would have orders for 308s in the middle of the Ferrari Formula One season. And they'll go, we need that switch for the Formula One car, so you can't have it for the 308s. So they'd have to put something else in the 308 just to finish the cars. So they ended up with cars that were just, they're not consistent, but they were finished at least.
Yeah. Or Luigi came in on Friday. He was mounting a seat. He used 2 spaces. And then Mario came in the Monday and he
One
said,
spacer.
6 spacers. Why not? I am very short. Why not? And then you get all these cars that this one you sit a bit more to the right. This one you sit a bit more to the left. Because I remember my junior compared to my wife's junior was literally like, okay, I'm sitting
You're
like
leaning
this
a
in
bit.
mine, and then hers is a bit more like. It's always, and even with the 916, your sitting position is so much is different. Even with like my
every
shape,
car.
it's but it makes them interesting.
So that's the thing, though. Modern Formula One cars aren't that interestingly different.
Yeah,
They look very similar. They are different in an aero tunnel and whatever, but they all look the
also-
same. If you paint them a different color, you wouldn't be able to
But
tell
there is
them.
other things that you can do to make it interesting, and that's what why I mentioned Montoya earlier.
Yeah.
Because the whole driver point system. I mean, now correct me if I'm wrong, but Verstappen was one of the reasons why they brought it in, because he said he's too young, right? When he was 16, basically driving a Formula One car for the first time. Now, so they made it so difficult. So when the talk was that Colton Herta might come from IndyCar, he didn't have enough. Points
Yeah,
he didn't have enough driver like on his license to be able to
Yeah.
drive Formula One car. So I think if the cars are more or less the same, then create other avenues for guys to test themselves. For instance, I want to see a guy like Leclerc do a once-off race in World Endurance Championships. I want to see someone from doing like coming like the best guy from there you go, your alarm again, Andre.
The RAV is stealing itself again.
why did the RAV wake you up this morning?
Yeah, clearly. He wants you to go home now. I want to see more guys coming from, for instance, from IndyCar, the best IndyCar driver, to get a seat in Formula One.
Yeah.
I want to see, for instance, I'd love to see someone like Alonso or like what Grosjean is doing. That's one of the reasons I started watching IndyCar, is because Ericsson and Grosjean and these guys went over and started racing in IndyCar.
Yeah.
Now, Grosjean crashed just as much as he did in Formula One there, but but I think that creates a lot of excitement as well.
But speaking of creating excitement, what do you guys think of these sprint races? Is that adding to the spectacle, or is it just prolonging it?
I think it's because the attention spans are getting shorter and they're trying to make it a weekend thing. Racing is a weekend thing. Sorry, now I'm going on a rant with it, but you're prepping for a race on a Sunday. That includes that there's certain practice sessions. If you're not interested to watch it, then don't. And probably some marketing team sat there and thought, we don't have anyone watching free practice one.
Yeah.
Well, so what?
We're going to call it a race and get people to watch it.
Yeah, are we going to call it a race and get people to watch it? So it just keep it the way it is.
Here's an interesting idea, right? I want to run this past the FIA. I think it's a brilliant plan, and I think they should implement it straight away.
Stefano Domenicali, are you listening?
Yeah.
Are we going to
So-
set the drivers alight?
No, we're not going to set the drivers on fire.
Okay.
That
Do we
would
don't
be
do
bad.
it? I think fire. I mean, drive the cars.
Yeah, of course.
Well, what we actually do is we take the drivers and we do the sprint race, but not in their Formula One cars. They have to do it in a road car from their team's manufacturing.
Yeah.
I would like to see that.
This
Yes.
is brilliant.
So that would be
You
very
for president.
that would
So
be very
funny story.
unfair.
Funny
To Haas,
story.
because they'd walk basically.
You get the Haas guys running around the track on foot.
They used to have these. They used to have these promotional kind of races where they had Senna, Berger, and all these guys, all the Formula
Yeah.
One guys, drive like Mercedes 190 AMGs.
Yeah, or the M1
Yeah.
Pro Car series.
Yeah, exactly. So that was cool, man. You're onto something.
That
man.
would
Yeah.
be damn
Yeah,
cool for the sprint race. I would watch
take the
that.
same grid drivers, take all the same drivers,
They could even use GT3 cars from there.
and
Yeah.
put them in road cars.
Yeah.
Or GT3 cars are already supposed to be even, right?
Yeah.
And McLaren's got a GT3 car, whatever,
doesn't.
Aston Martin, all these.
You know
Well,
what?
they don't even have a F1 cars.
You know what they did back in the day? I mean, even this wasn't done too long ago, but the guys did end of year karting races.
Yes.
So they did the stadium
didn't know
karting
that.
race.
Senna, Prost, and all these
Yeah.
guys. They were racing
What?
karts against each other. Yeah.
But that's where it points to like the guys have become robots, because I think the stakes are so high. So a kid coming through the ranks, right, going into Formula One, the kid has got no friends basically because he's not been to school.
All his friends are on the grid.
all his friends are on the grid like that. That's there's no other that's your avenue you get, and then you get there, and then there's so much money at stake. You can't piss off someone in the wrong manner, because then they'll kick you off for saying the word paddock basically, and then you sit without a Formula One drive.
But
So
what we're
it's
saying
all
is
like
some
it's
kind of
we need some excitement. We need some personality.
some
Yeah,
exciting exhibition race of some description, whether
Yeah.
it be in road cars, GT3 cars,
Rallycross
karts,
cars.
rallycross
Yeah.
cars,
Yeah.
something, but it doesn't count towards the championship. It's just there to purely have fun
Entertainment. Yeah.
Now the problem is it's
and for
because
bragging rights.
no, but the problem is so what has
Well,
Max
let the
Verstappen-
reserve drivers do it then. Because
That's
you know what
true,
they're going to be
yes,
worried
yes.
about. They're going to say, "Oh no, what if someone hurts his hand?"
Exactly.
Let
You're
the
gonna
reserve
have
drivers
you're gonna
do
have
it.
Ricardo break his hand again
Yeah.
in a stadium truck, and then he's gonna be out for 6 months, and they'll be like, "Oh no, it's
Yeah.
because they're not allowed to race." So Leclerc would really love to race in Le Mans, but he's not allowed
not
to
allowed
race
to, yeah.
anything else. You're not allowed to do any competitive race if you're a Formula One driver. It's in your contract.
So because the
That's
variety,
ridiculous. I mean,
yeah.
Clark.
if you look back
Remember?
at people like Jim Clark,
Yeah,
we
Jim
were chatting
Clark, dude.
we were chatting about him the other day.
But it's a
doing
different world, right?
So many different disciplines of racing.
Well,
On the same
remember
weekend.
they used to race Formula 1 and Formula 2. He died in a Formula 2 car.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they used
Yeah.
to race both on the same weekend. Be like, oh, cool, done with the Formula 1 race. Cool, let's line up for Formula 2. Let's do
Formula
it. Let's get some points.
But I think with the personalities thing that Neil is on as well, and sorry I'm jumping around now, is the issue is it's also like Formula One is expensive. Any form of motorsport is expensive sport. So you get into rich kids most of the time. That's coming through the ranks because they've got the accessibility to go and actually do it. Where you're not really getting someone like Schumacher who scavenged for used tires. Not that I'm not saying they didn't have money. Or
No, they
whatever.
didn't.
They
No,
didn't.
they
Yeah,
didn't.
Honda,
did
you-
they?
Compared to the
Yeah,
modern guys, they did
yeah,
not
but
have
that's
money.
what I mean.
Schumacher
Yeah.
didn't have money. Raikkonen didn't have money.
Yeah.
Willie Weber found Schumacher, right?
I feel
By
like
chance.
I feel like
basically.
there must be a way for other talent also to be not hunted, but like somewhere for them to be seen. But that's never going to happen, obviously.
Show me the money, man.
Yeah,
It's all about the money.
and I mean, and with Formula 2, if I'm correct, what is quite crazy to me is if you've won a Formula 2 championship, just correct me if I'm not wrong, you can't drive again.
So what?
I think if you win
Oh,
a
you can't do
Formula
Formula 2
2
again.
you can't do Formula 2 again.
You
so
can't be a
if you
double
don't,
champion, yeah.
So if you don't have a seat for Formula 1, you're done. That's it. Over.
not
Game over.
sure
I'm
about
not 100.
that.
I think it's just maybe a bit of career suicide if you do it again and you don't win it again. But it's an interesting point. I don't know if that's the case because there is some of the guys. I think there must be double. Isn't David Valsecchi, the Italian guy? Isn't he a double Formula 2 champion?
I don't know, but I mean,
But
you
anyway,
wouldn't
yeah.
want to, right?
You wouldn't want to do it
That
again.
kind of
Because
says
all-
something about how much we watch Formula 2.
Yeah,
No, but
we
all
don't.
of their
Upon winning Formula 2 championship, drivers are not permitted to remain in the category. They must therefore either progress, find a drive outside of Formula 1 structure, or face a year sitting on the sidelines in anticipation of a seat.
Oh wow. Okay. Interesting.
What
So
happened
they
to
force
Piastri?
it. They force you to go up, but then there's no
But
option
there's
for
nowhere
you.
to go.
There's nowhere to
no
go.
option, yeah.
But this is also something I recently that I was listening. I mean, it was a podcast about MotoGP, and they were talking about retaining riders after long injury. And they were talking. There was a guy that got booted recently. Now I don't want to go on that, but the guys were saying how bad it is that the team treated him like that. He didn't ride for the whole year because of a severe injury, and then they kick him out. And I thought to myself,
There's so
that
many people waiting.
what happened to Licky Lauda, right? He was literally out of the car, and then wasn't it within a day or so or two? Then they said, "This is our replacement driver," right?
Yeah.
They couldn't. They had to replace him, and that's part of the sport. So I was sitting there thinking, and this is motorsport media calling that out, but it's a cutthroat place. There's a whole roster of youngsters wanting to come
Every
through.
time that they cry about some team, oh, how can it be so unfair? They only gave him 18 months to get used to a car. I'm like,
No, it doesn't
guys,
work like
no.
that.
If you don't produce for a time, it's like a business.
Same
You're
same
out.
with the Vries. The Vries is a good example.
De Vries
I
did not
like
produce.
He didn't produce. I like the fact that he came back from Formula E, but he didn't produce. I mean, he was completely underwhelming. I thought a lot more of him. I thought
expected
he was
a lot
good.
more. Yeah.
I also expected a lot more. I think he's a great personality. He's a great marketing tool, by the way.
Yeah.
I think he's great at that. But sorry to say, you didn't cut the mustard. And
You're not a F1 class driver, sorry.
Yeah.
And the people had their mouths full about that. Oh, it's a typical Red Bull. How dare they do that? I'm like,
let them do
No.
it.
By
Let
the
them
same
do it.
token,
Doesn't make it.
there are lots of Formula 1 caliber drivers out there that don't get a seat because they don't get seen, they don't get noticed. I mean,
well, there's Formula 1
I'm still
caliber
waiting
drivers.
for Ferrari to call me, but you know,
There's Formula 1.
I'm not gonna wait forever.
There's world-class single-seater drivers in South Africa.
yeah,
There's guys we know guys
Yeah.
that are
Andrew Stewart.
that are top international talents.
Mm.
But the kind of money that you need just to get into
Even a GT3 car is insane.
no, the kind of money you need to compete in the karting world championship is insane.
Yeah.
To do KZ world
yeah.
championship.
And if you're not
is-
going to finance it yourself, it's hard to find the sponsorship for
Yeah,
that kind of.
but now to get into GP3 for a year or two and get into, we've got some guys that race karts with us. There's a guy that races DD2 that races for Burrell every now and then. He was a GP3 racer. He raced in GP3 a few years ago. But now you need to pay your way there for a year or two, and then you need to go to GP2, and it just goes up from there, millions of pounds. So I mean, it becomes you need now to get into Formula One. You need the talent. You need top talent.
Yeah.
Well, that's
You need a lot of
you
money
still need,
more.
You still need good talent, but you need a lot of money and you need contacts. Guys like Saints, Magnus, and those guys, if their parents weren't famous drivers, they really would have struggled with the contacts.
But here's what I say to people that of the Drive to Survive generation. I always ask them, what other motorsport do you watch?
yeah.
Because I think there's if you also actually look at variety, right? I mean, if Ferrari, if Formula One doesn't deliver it, World Endurance Championship now
It's brilliant
next year,
racing,
it's
yeah.
going to be brilliant with a variety of different engines, variety of drivetrains, layouts. So I think we're going to go into a bit of a next golden era in that sense. But there's also this perception that for non-Formula One drivers are washed out.
Oh, that's
There's some guys,
No.
and you see it a lot. You see it a lot more in the biking community between MotoGP and Superbike, right?
Yeah.
You see that a lot. So there is this sort of like a elitist perception. I think is wrong because there's unfortunately only place for 20 guys.
On the
Yeah.
grid.
On the grid,
and that's
But
that.
not just
And,
that. I mean,
but look at Albon.
there's also there are lots of different disciplines of driving, and some drivers are better in one discipline than they are in
Correct,
others.
yeah.
I mean, you take a Formula One driver and put him in a rallycross car, he's not going to feel at home
Well,
when the
Kimi
car
will.
starts moving around. on the dirt.
it depends who they are.
Look, it depends on-
Kimi will.
That's why I like.
Kimmy's too drunk. He won't notice the difference.
Well, you know Kimi has World Rally Championship, right?
Yeah, I know.
But that's why I like the race of champions.
Yeah.
At the
Oh,
end of
that
the
is
year.
great, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So,
you're
so,
going
so
into-
really great drivers are not just Formula One drivers. Like,
Yeah.
so Alonso, you know, having the testicular fortitude to compete in Indy cars in the Indy 500, and win the car. He did win it, right?
No.
They didn't win the car.
competed.
Sorry, he competed in the car. He won. He won the
Le Mans.
and he's a Formula One multiple world champion. You know, doing all of those things, that to me is a different kind of driver.
Yep.
But it would be great if we can. But he could only do it when he had the off years.
Yeah.
You know, a guy like, I think Verstappen would love to go drive at Bathurst and do all those things, GT3 cars, but he can't because he's worth too much to Red Bull. They're paying this guy millions and millions of pounds a year.
More than £50 million a year. At
Exactly.
The moment.
So it would be stupid for them to risk that kind of investment.
Yeah.
And just have him stuff around in a competitive race somewhere and break his neck in a karting race or something.
But at the same time, you know, is it? I don't know. It's. I get where you're coming from.
It shouldn't
with the
be like
whole-
that.
It shouldn't
It's
be
not
like
cool.
that.
It's not-
It's not cool that you take someone who genuinely runs on passion. I mean, that's what these guys do. They run on pure,
Yeah.
100% unfiltered passion for driving. And now you're saying you can't drive anything else. That's
Well-
maybe why they don't have the personality that they used to have. They're just not allowed to.
I mean, we have to say on the other side, right? We got kind of like we got taken. I don't know what the right English expression of it is. Sorry, but Robert Kubica, for instance, right, who almost lost his arm. He signed for Ferrari, right?
Brilliant driver in his day.
And then you know almost lost his arm and then was taken out of circulation for years. So to fight back is great, but on the other side, I feel like I would have loved to see Kubica in a Ferrari next to Alonso. He would have most likely partnered Alonso.
Yeah.
And that would have been
He was one of the best setup guys, right? So Kubica, he was setting up karts and driving them. The feel that guy had for car and setup was second to none. And tuning in engines and everything. So he used to go into teams and do that. So when
And
he
that's
came
what
back,
Lauda did as well. That's
Yeah,
what
but-
made him great.
Kubica was a lot like that, I think. So the thing with Kubica was that when he came back, it was almost this kind of charity. It was a cool story.
Yeah. He
That
wasn't
somebody
on the
with one
same
arm
level.
can drive a Formula One car again, but he couldn't drive it competitively. I mean, he was way off pace. He was just not there anymore.
You can't expect him to, right?
No.
Being 6-7 years out.
So it was kind of this feel good story, but he wasn't a good Formula One driver anymore because he just couldn't do it. Same with Martin Brundle, right? So Martin Brundle, nice F1 host and whatnot. That guy was a top talent. And then he was in a bad accident. I think
Yeah,
he
Formula
couldn't
3
use
or
his
something
one
like
foot
that.
properly or something even. He was quite badly hurt. And after that, he was still a good driver, but he wasn't
Like a race
say-
driver.
Did the same not happen to Johnny Herbert?
No,
Johnny Herbert also had an accident.
no, Johnny Herbert was never a good driver. It's just the British folk that thought he was.
wow.
He was terrible.
I
Okay, but
don't
let's-
think he was that
let's
bad.
just- let's
He-
just
no, he
end
wasn't
with
that-
this whole
he won Le
discussion.
Mans as well. So
He wasn't that bad, but he wasn't as great as Murray Walker tried to make him
Guys,
sound.
can we just end this discussion by saying anyone that we mention as being a bad driver in the context of Formula One is still a brilliant driver. Because you don't get
Yes.
to sit in a Formula One car unless you have shown some serious wheel skills.
They are not average drivers by the normal measure of things.
By
Or race
saying he's a
drivers.
bad driver doesn't mean he's a bad driver. It just means he's not as
He's
good
not
as
a
some of
great
the other
driver.
Formula One
So
drivers.
let me rephrase that. Johnny Herbert's not a terrible driver. He is a grossly overrated driver. That is more.
He won a couple of races, did win the only rotary powered.
Even a broken clock is right twice a day.
Yeah, but I mean, in Formula One, Johnny Herbert in Formula One, he was
Yeah,
always Murray Walker always made a big thing. Oh, Johnny Herbert's gone from 9th to 8th position or whatever. He would go like this big thing. He would always talk about the front runners, and then he would talk about Johnny.
So, quick whip around the room, guys. Do we think that Formula One is on the right path, or do you think they need to do a 180? Nico?
I think they need to do, let's say, not a full 180, but a semi 180. Keep the safety, but change a few stuff. So keep our drivers safe, but make it a bit more exciting, like the aero, smaller cars maybe, and keep ice motors. Do the alternative fuel methods.
More alternative fuels with proper sounding revving engines, smaller cars, and I like your idea of like having races
Yes.
with something else.
Yeah, like an exhibition race of some description.
Exactly. That would be very cool. The sprint races, I don't have a problem with. The more racing, the better for me. I don't mind it.
I know that some of the drivers don't like it, though.
Yeah, they don't, because they don't get to set up the cars and stuff. But what I like about it is, like this past sprint race, is you've got Leclerc coming, and suddenly, with that qualifying, he's up front, because they only had like an hour to look at the car. They didn't have time to set up a car. Where he's always good in a sprint weekend, because he's a natural, instinctive driver. I kind of like that.
I like Formula One. I don't think they need to do any 180 turns. What I don't like at the moment is that they are lobbying against putting another team on the grid, and I don't like that the big manufacturers like Mercedes is pushing to not get guys like Andretti on the grid. I think it would be refreshing to have another team on to get more competition. So I don't think there's any sort of major. It would be nice if they go, but I think in the overall state of it is quite healthy.
Yeah, I think they've been trying to steer it in the right direction. I think their method of going about it has been maybe a little bit wrong. I would say that to steer it more towards an exciting racing event, they need to start taking rules away rather than adding more restriction. I don't like this idea of artificially creating competition, like the DRS. You're artificially giving someone else an advantage so that overtaking and stuff can take place. Yes, it's made the racing more exciting to watch, but I mean, is that really racing? I also I'd like to see the cars being driven, at 10/10ths all of the time. I don't want to see guys going around in laps just nursing their tires.
Less laps, flat out. I'd be happy
Fewer
with.
laps, more flat out. And, lift the restrictions on the cars a little bit as well, so that we can have that variation and that innovation and stuff happening. Guys can experiment with different fuels, different car designs, different suspension setups, different, just make them different.
But the problem with that is that then you struggle to get an even field. Then you get to people that run away completely.
Which is sad on one end, but on the other end,
They kind of deserve it.
they
Because
kind of deserve it.
no, I mean, it just becomes to watch. It becomes a bit boring.
Yeah, but at the same time, you're going to get, like I said before, over the length of a race, the guy who's got that massive advantage on the short run, he's going to have a disadvantage of some description in the long run, possibly. He might not. He might just run away with the whole damn race.
Yeah.
But even that is something to watch if he's driving it at 10 tenths.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, like you guys say, F1's in a healthier place today than it was a couple of years ago. I absolutely agree with that. But I don't like the size of the cars. I don't like the way they sound. And I'd love to just see naturally aspirated engines screaming again, because that is, it's an indescribable, unforgettable thing that you just genuinely, you'll never forget that. Once you sit trackside and one of those things comes screaming past you like that, it's an unreal feeling.
That would also drive people to want to go watch it live.
Yes.
Rather than just the live feed or whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's so much different there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much what we've got time for today, guys. If you agree with our views on Formula One, please write us some letters, an email, or
even
drop
if
something
it's-
in the comment. If you don't agree with us, then
It's
anyway,
it's your
then write a strongly worded letter, and we might read it.
no, just address
it's-
it to Niku.
it is your democratic right to be wrong. So
It is your right to have your incorrect opinion. Until next week, then.
Stay classy, San Diego. Yes, I got one in.
Stay classy, San Diego.
guys, are we done now?
Yeah, but I guess we're done.
Lights out and away we go.
Hey!